All right, everyone, welcome back into an emergency live edition of the Patriots Beat podcast. Back like 12 hours after we were on early. We did an early show. We thought it was going to be a nice, easy night, and now we're back. But it is Brian Hines with Alex Barth. We are powered by our wonderful friends over at Prize Picks for this emergency episode because we have reached the end of the Matthew Judon saga as the Patriots have traded him to the Atlanta Falcons for a third-round pick. This has gone drawn out a while, right, as the Patriots have re-signed and returned a lot of their internal free agents as they were checking all these guys off the list and even extending guys who are going to be up next year, which Judon's contract was the case. And Judon just never got his money. You know, it was 6.5 base salary this year. Last year of his deal, no guaranteed money remaining. And then we had, you know, the incident with the padded practice where he was out there, no pads. He was talking to Gerard Mayo. He left. He came back out, you know, talked to Elliot Wolf, talked to Matt Groh. He left again. We didn't see him the next day. And then ever since, he's really been a participant. I think he missed one padded practice, but he's been out there kind of flying around. But we finally, you've been saying it, something has to happen until before the start of the season, and something has happened as they trade him to the Atlanta Falcons. So we'll get to the return. We will get to the replacements, but like how did we get here, right? Like something had to happen, but did it have to reach this point, do you think?
No. And both sides are at fault for it getting this far. I wrote back in February, headline, the big Patriots offseason question nobody is talking about is we were all trying to figure out the quarterbacks and all that they were going to have to do something with Judon. And the reality, maybe it still would have ended up with him getting traded, but guy's their best player. And there was an uncertain path ahead for him. They should have figured out, they should have gotten ahead of, I think, what was going to happen here and either negotiated an extension early or earlier, or figured out a trade earlier. Because if they knew they were going to pay everybody, pay all these guys, not having Judon in that plan is weird to me. I've said this. I get what they were doing, re-signing all those players and trying to establish a core. But how is that the one guy that doesn't get paid? Injury, they paid other guys who were hurt last year.
30-year-olds Hunter Henry and David Andrews got extensions.
Attitude, they paid Devon Gotcha after he sat out of practice. Injury, they paid Ramondre Stevenson. Hunter Henry was also hurt at the end of last year. So he's a little older than some of those guys, but like, I don't understand what that was. So they should have figured it out earlier because he would have had more value. I think they could have gotten a second-round pick for him back in March if they traded him before the draft. They also would have had, if they'd figured this out earlier, how nice would it have been to have this third-round pick in this previous draft. Maybe they're able to move up at the end of the first round and get that tackle, or move up from the third into the second.
They tried
and get a tackle.
And they couldn't.
Right, they tried and they didn't have the ammunition. So now look, this happens. The Niners are in the exact same spot with Brandon Ayuk. They thought they were going to get a deal done. They didn't trade him at the draft when they had opportunities. Now suddenly things change. They don't get a deal done, but this is part of being a GM, and it's not an easy part. It's part I don't envy. I know people think we like to play GM on this show, but this is something I'm glad I don't have to deal with, being able to project that far ahead and know. But he should have been one of the first guys that got a deal done with. When it became apparent they weren't going to get a deal done, they should have worked on a trade. Maybe it didn't become apparent until camp, but it's first time GM, and he had a welcome to the NFL moment, gauge the situation better. And on Judon's part, I think when he got a little later on, was he being realistic in his ask? The reporting was they were very far apart. I can't imagine the Patriots were trying to stiff him too much, given some of the other contracts they gave out. It just would be uncharacteristic. So to me, both sides are at fault that it got this far. It should not have gotten this far. This should have been resolved back in March or April before the draft. Somebody pointed out we're on the opposite sides we usually are. That's true.
Are we? There we go.
it should. Thank you. It should not have gotten this far. It should have been figured out before the draft. That being said, and this kind of we laid out 4 points before the show, Brian. How did we get here? Was this the right move for where they are? Did they get enough? And what happens next? So I guess before I give my next point of, now that we're here, I don't know if you feel any differently about getting to this point. But I think it got too far, and I think both sides are at fault.
Yeah, it was just, I mean, if you go back to that 21 spending spree, he was the hit, right? Like he was the best player. He's been the best player post Brady. He's been probably the face of the franchise, you could even say. Like if it wasn't Bill, I know Bill was getting thrown on like Thursday Night Football graphics, but it was probably Matt Judon, right? Like he was the face of the franchise. So it was a little weird that everyone gets paid except for him. Now we don't know. Like I don't think nothing's come out from Atlanta's side about a contract, like unless they pull the Jets move with Hassan Reddick. Like you'd imagine they're trading for him and giving him money. So maybe we'll get a better read on what that contract is going to look like and what his demands were. But we don't know that. But yeah, it probably shouldn't have got to this point. So
I would just add to Brian, sorry, to something you just said about he was the face of the franchise post Brady.
Yeah,
he was. Like I mean, Bill was, but as a player, he was the face of the franchise post Brady. He bought into the program. I know people are going to remember him as a guy that shot his way out of town, but I think for a long time he bought in, and he was at the forefront of trying to establish something new. I remember the Brady game when they came back, and he was the tone setter that week, and he was kind of relaying what worked for his Ravens teams when they came in and played Brady, and talking about things he learned from Ray Lewis and Terrell Suggs. And he, like, I don't know. The signing in 2021 was still a good signing. It sucks it ended this way, but I would call Matthew Judon's career as a Patriot on the whole a positive. It just sucks the two sides couldn't get out of their way at the end here.
Yep. I mean, you go on Patriots.com and they have 5 players on the top of their website, and he's in the middle. So they're going to have to change that, obviously. Here soon, but
busy night for some people down there, I think.
Yeah. But the trade itself, we did get to this point. So was it the right or wrong move? You know, it's going to hurt them on the field. And we'll talk about the replacements, but you saw last year without him, their pass rush dropped significantly. I think 2 years ago, I don't have the numbers exactly, but they were either 4th or 5th in the league in sacks. And then he gets hurt last year and they kind of dropped. I think they were like 27th or 28th they finished. And there were some other factors that went into that. But Judon obviously played a big role in that. So your pass rush is going to take a hit, but he's 32. He's coming off the injury. Patriots aren't competing for a Super Bowl this year, probably not competing for a playoff spot. Like he's not in your next contention window. He's not on your next contending team. So is trading him right now, do you think this is the right reasons for that, or the wrong that, you know, we're going to lose the pass rush? And maybe as we just, you know, lay the foundation that Gerard Mayo keeps saying, we're losing a locker room guy and maybe a guy that might make our defense a little bit worse, which is going to be supposed to be the strength of this team.
I think it's the right move for where things got. Again, I would have paid him back in March. And I don't know if I said that before with my whole rant about figure it out back then, pay him or trade him. I would have paid him back in March. I would have given him the money to get through this year, and then I would have parted ways after this year. He was an important locker room presence and a guy that does help you remain competitive because you don't want losing to become habitual. But I don't know at this point, was he still going to be that positive locker room presence given what was happening with his contract? Were they going to be able to get him for just the year? Were they going to have to sign him to like a 3 or 4 year deal? That kind of changed the numbers on it. So once you hit that Monday practice that he walked out of, they had to make a move. I think at that point they had to make a move. It is a big blow to this year, and I don't love it because, again, you don't want losing to become habitual. You don't want to essentially tank. They have other veteran leaders in that room. They re-signed a bunch of guys. Guys like Devon Godshaw are going to need to step up. Jabril Peppers, Kyle Duggar. But, yeah, I just don't think – I just think they're past the point of no return. I think they're past the point of no return, and I think this had to happen.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. Like, you're already down Christian Barmore, so taking Matthew Judon off that pass rush, like, that hurts. There's no easy way to say that. Like that hurts, and it's going to make your defense worse this year. And again, like your defense was going to be, if you were going to try to squeak 5-6 wins and build some positive momentum, it was probably going to be your defense, unless it's like a late season surge by Drake May or something. So you don't want losing to become, you know, habitual. You don't want that to be a thing that, you know, is into your team. So, and Judon was going to help not make that happen. But I think with the age and again not being in that next contending window and with the episode on the early padded practices probably had to happen, and then with the return, which we can get into, a third round pick, top 100 pick, maybe even Atlanta, like in that 80-85 range, like mid third round. That's a pretty good return. I think we were thinking maybe it's fourth, fifth when we were talking about this earlier. So I think the third round pick there is great value. And I'm sure, Atlanta lost Braylon Trice, their rookie edge rusher, a few days ago for the season. So that probably maybe bumped this up. And it seemed like they had a healthy market too. I know Chicago was involved, and I believe Jeremy Fowler said the Texans were involved. So it seems like a few teams were interested on Judon. But, I think when you're deciding right or wrong move, the third round pick definitely makes this a little more enticing, and was probably a round and a half higher than I was expecting this to be at this point.
Yeah. So some number, I actually, this is about right. This is about what they should have gotten, and they didn't have to pay the late in the season tax. I was initially, Judon's worth a top 100 pick.
Yeah.
Judon's worth a top 100 pick. I was expecting a fourth or fifth, not the sixth with Stephon Gilmore. They avoided that situation. But I'm going to give you some numbers, Brian. I posted this on Twitter earlier. So Matthew Judon the last 3 seasons. Keep in mind he turns 32 tomorrow. By the way, happy birthday to Matthew Judon. Happy early birthday.
Hopefully he gets paid for his birthday. He deserves it. He deserves it.
Yes, he does. Matthew Judon entering his age 32 season, coming off a season-ending injury. The previous 3 seasons, 38 games, 32 sacks, 62 quarterback hits, 33 tackles for loss. Here's another player entering his age 31 season, so 1 year younger, does have a contract. Judon doesn't have a contract right now, essentially. This player has a long-term contract, also coming off a season-ending injury. 39 games, 23 and a half sacks, so that's 9 fewer, 8.5 fewer. 34 quarterback hits, almost half fewer. 25 tackles for loss, that's 8 fewer in 1 more game. That's Khalil Mack right before he got traded to the Chargers. So not the first time he got traded, he went for the haul to the Bears. This is from the Bears to the Raiders. So Judon, across the board, better numbers. Not the same pedigree. Khalil Mack had been a defensive player of the year, not within that 3-year window, but he'd been in defensive player of the year. Mack went for a second and a future. Mack went for a second, but it was also, I'm butchering this. It was Mack and a future 6 for a second in March. Judon went for a third in August. And did so without a contract. Mack already had a deal. The Bears were just shedding cap. Those are comparable trades. To me, they got it when you, now, if they moved him in March and got a third, I'd say they didn't get enough. I'd give up the 6 and get the second. But for the time of year, all things considered, I actually think the return is right. Still think it still sucks they had to trade him. They still should have figured this out and paid him months ago. But to get to where they got, trading a third round pick, getting a third round pick for him, and Falcons will probably be a playoff team, maybe not. That could be a top 70 pick. That's a very good return from Elliott Wolf.
Yep. He's going to be a really good fit there too. I think they needed they needed an edge rusher, so he's going to be a good fit.
Him next to Grady Jarrett, come on.
Yeah, but I was kind of with you. Like Judon is worth a top 100 pick, but when you're at August 14th, right? Like you don't see these guys move this late in the year like that. So that's where kind of maybe fourth. I wouldn't say fifth, but that fringe 4th round range, I thought. So I thought a 3rd round pick was good value now. And now they have, I believe, 9 picks in next year's draft. They have their own 1st, their own 2nd, their own 3rd, and now the Atlanta 3rd in the top 100 there. So some extra capital.
There's not a ton of comp picks. Their 4th could be like 100 or 101 too.
Yeah, definitely. So some extra capital there. Well, maybe next year they want to move around the board, right? They have their quarterback and
yeah.
Maybe next year they can trade down if they're high up and they don't need a quarterback, or if they want to move up for one of those offensive tackles, they have an extra 3rd round pick and some ammunition in order to do that. So 9 picks next year. That's how it's looking right now. More fun for us in our live mock drafts. We'll have an extra 3rd round pick to play with as well. So
that is getting traded to move up to get Will Campbell.
Will
I'll tell you
Campbell.
that right now. And if they can already get Will Campbell, it's getting traded to move back up into the end of the first.
There we go.
So, I would look at that pick more as, or one of them. Maybe the Patriots third ends up getting moved, but because I had to text my friend who freaked out. Dude, the hell are they getting in the third round? Are they going to get an FCS tackle? I'd look at this a lot more as a trade chip than I would as a selectable draft pick. Like, you look at, next year, if they're trading for a receiver, if it's CeeDee Lamb or it's DK Metcalf, is the extra third they can offer maybe the difference, and them landing him versus another team getting him. So, yeah, I'd view it as that.
Yeah. It's probably going to be annoying for the first month or two in the season not having Matthew Judon out there, but then once we get December or that part of the year where we're like, okay, we have that extra third round pick, that's going to be nice to have in a couple months, right? That'll come in handy. So, yep, third round pick in return. Before we get on replacing Matthew Judon and how that might look up front, very quickly, PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members, and it's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports because unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers as you pick just more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. And PrizePicks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. And I know we're all excited to see Drake May eventually, but another rookie quarterback is going to start week 1 out in Chicago, and one Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on PrizePicks every week in September. That's right. Only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football season or weekend in September. So that's 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss this deal on PrizePicks because it's gone when September ends. Great song. Shout out Green Day. But download PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks for a deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, last thing, again, just quick emergency pod here. So last thing, they have to replace Matthew Judon now. And I said it earlier, you saw last year without him when he was out with the bicep injury, the sack totals fell down. Josh Uche's production took a hit, and that was with Christian Barmore in there. And now we might not have Christian Barmore. So I think, A, you're hoping for a monster kind of second-year jump from Keon White. 2, you're hoping, or B, I'm going A and then 2. That's our 9 o'clock show for you. But secondly, Josh Uche, he might be getting more attention now, but you hope he can kind of get back to what he was 2 years ago with double-digit sacks. And then some of these depth guys, we're talking about O'Shane and Zannis a lot this summer. He's looked really good. Can provide some juice on the edge as a pass rusher. So I think those are your main 3 guys. Uche was always going to be on his own side, so it's more White and Zannis replacing Judon. But is that just the main guys you're looking at? And how are you replacing Matthew Judon here now that he's gone?
Yeah, it's going to have to be by committee. And they're already replacing Christian Barmore by committee, so it's going to be a lot. But I think the one guy you look at is Josh Uche. He took less money, came back here, bet on himself. He's been circled as that next guy to be that pin your ears back and go pass rusher. Like he wants to get paid like a primary pass rusher. Here's his chance to show that's who he is. Because I think most of it's going to fall on his plate. I think you'll see some of it from O'Shane Zannis. Keon White will certainly get some, especially on the earlier downs, some more work. But to me, Joshua Uche is the guy. Joshua Uche is guys that's got to step up here. Joshua Uche is the guy that you're looking to elevate his game and give you that real down in, down out sack threat.
He's got to be your one-on-one winner, right? Like unless you see it from Keon White, like it's got to be Josh Uche to win his one-on-ones and get pressure on the quarterback. Because as good as O'Shane Zannis has been this summer, like he's not Matthew Judon, he's not Josh Uche. Right? Like, can you consistently count on him to win one-on-ones? Probably not. So it's got to come from Uche. But yeah, a year 2 Keon White leap. We've been talking maybe that could be kind of a luxury. Now might be a necessity up front there. You want to see him take a leap. So yeah, those are the big 2 guys. And then Anthony Jennings, not a pass rusher, but he's still going to have a big role, that early down kind of edge setter. So that's kind of your edge depth and replacement. So Anyone in the draft for next year? Edge was probably already going to be a need, but
Yeah,
now maybe more. I know it's James Pierce from Tennessee. That's a top
James
guy,
Pierce Jr.
But if you're picking offensive tackle first, you're probably not getting James Pierce.
Right.
So quick
Can
look
you
ahead.
pull up? Sorry,
mock
can you
draft?
pull up? I'll pull up I have some of the edge guys. Can you pull up the free agents? Because that may be more realistic. Not that they won't draft a guy on the edge, but I think that's going to be more of a little more of a not a project, but if you want instant impact, you're doing that through free agency. So James Pierce is the top guy. He's gonna be a first round pick. Maybe you trade at the back end of the first round. Is it Tiamalalu? JT Tiamalalu is how you pronounce that, from Ohio State. Jack Sawyer from Ohio State. Patrick Payton from Florida State. Yaya Black from Iowa. Josiah Stewart from Michigan. These are some of the top, like the day 2 edge guys. Colin Oliver from Oklahoma State. Those are some of the guys I like that are going to be day 2. I think Tiamalalu might, Sawyer, even Payton might sneak in the back end of the first round there, but maybe they'd be trade-up candidates. But yeah, they'll draft a guy, and they'll probably draft a guy in the top 100. But if you're looking for like instant impact, Judon replacement, I think you're going to have to do that through free agency.
So free agents on the edge. Khalil Mack is the top guy, but he's going to be almost 30. He's going to be almost 36.
Future Tennessee Titan.
Hassan Reddick is the next guy. Who knows where he's going to be playing anytime. And then
he's going to get a contract, a long-term contract, so he won't be a free agent.
And then it's Matthew Judon. Then it's DeMarcus Lawrence, who's going to be like 34. And then it's some younger guys, Josh Sweat. He's 28 currently from Philly.
I would take Josh Sweat.
Chase Young. Jerome Baker from Seattle. Marcus Davenport in Detroit. So those are kind of your top edge guys.
Josh Sweat, Chase Young. Those would be the 2 guys I'd look at.
Let me see. Defensive end. It's all the same list.
Is it? Okay.
Pretty much. So.
Was that PFF?
That was just Spot Track real quick.
Okay. Or maybe you get a Matthew Judon situation where there's a guy, or Hassan Reddick situation where there's a guy in the last year of his deal, and you trade a third-round pick for him.
Yeah, you have a third-round pick.
That's also what the Jets gave up.
Yeah, it was like a conditional third or something like that. So
yeah, it was a conditional third. It could have become a second, which if the guy signs, that's fine. And that's a year down the road. You'd be giving up the pick in 2026 when you should be more
competitive,
solidified. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that's it, right? Nothing else. Think that we hit on everything there.
I mean, I guess I would just add, I think you kind of touched on it. Judon's a great fit in Atlanta.
Yeah.
So, all right, let me ask you this. This was the one other thought I had. I think it was Schultz who initially reported this, who had this, that it came down to the Falcons and the Bears. Assuming they both offered a third, did the Patriots make the right decision taking the Falcons pick over the Bears pick?
Ooh. Yes. I'll say yes.
I think the Falcons pick is safer. Because they do seem like a playoff team, but they're going to be one and done in the playoffs. The Bears could be that pick could be, the very bottom of that round. So there's also a chance they don't make the playoffs. They're in a better division, but they could also win a playoff game.
Bears are like higher floor ceiling almost.
Right.
Falcons are kind of steady in the middle there. So yeah, but all right. We'll wrap it up there. Unless, do you have any Drake May takes? You didn't get off in any of your other 4 shows. We don't need to talk about Drake May.
Yeah, no.
It'll be our first show since.
I'll say this: I'm sure Drake May's glad that that's one less guy he has to deal with behind this offensive line in practice. That's my Drake May take on all this.
There you go. But it will be our first show since like October that we won't go into detail on Drake May. Nice refresher there. So we'll call it here. Mike and Taylor are coming up in a couple minutes right here on the channel. So if you want to hear their takes on the Matthew Judon trade, make sure you stay on Patriots Press Pass for when they come up at 9:00. We'll be back Friday again, break down the preseason game 2 against the Eagles, probably sometime in the afternoon, early afternoon. But follow Patriots CLNS on Twitter. We'll let you know when we're going live. Also turn on your notifications for Patriots Press Pass so you get notified when we are going live as well. And follow Alex on Twitter at RealAlexBarth. Head over to 985thesportshub.com. He's got written coverage on the Matthew Judon trade and Patriots training camp preseason, everything over there. And you can follow me on Twitter at I am Brian Hines, and head over to patspulpit.com. We got plenty of Judon coverage and a look ahead to tomorrow's or Thursday's preseason. That's tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow's preseason game.
Still got a game
as well. I know we got a game tomorrow. We'll be at Gillette for a game tomorrow. So thank you everyone for tuning in on this emergency pod tonight, and we will see you guys real soon.